Thanks everyone for joining us. We're starting a little bit um, late, just a bit, but we wanted to make sure that everyone is able to get on. Um, and so this afternoon, I've got Councilmember Steve Glover with me. Thank you, Councilmember, for joining. If
Sure.
you all remember, we're looking at the budget and we're having a discussion on where we are on the budget. So we've had 4 substitutes submitted. Councilmember Emily Benedict, who's pulled hers eventually. You got Councilmember Freddie O'Connor, the budget chair Mendes, and now Councilmember Steve Glover. So what we want to do today is, as we've always done, is a conversation for us to be able to understand where we are and to be able to ask questions. And so I'm going to start off by asking Councilmember Glover to just talk to us about how did we get here? Like I've asked the others, spend about 1 or 2 minutes as a returning council member, somebody who served in so many boards. Um, how did we get here? What is your take on the environment as a whole?
Well, we've overspent. We've overspent for years, and unfortunately, it's a challenge, and therefore we are where we are right now. You can't spend more money than you have coming in and expect for the budget to balance. It doesn't work that way, but unfortunately, that's what we've done.
Well, so we're here now and we're looking for solution. And you know all the solutions that's been put forward. The mayor with $1, Councilmember Mendes with either $1, $1.06. You got Freddie O'Connor, I believe it's 37 cents, if I'm not mistaken, and Emily with $1.16. So would you tell us about your substitute? I want you to look at it. I want you to cover a couple of things, and I'll give you about 10 minutes to talk. Um, I want you to tell us the rationale, how you came up with the numbers, why you come up with the numbers. I want you to also tell us what is the rate that you're proposing. And then if it's not an increase, if it is a decrease, what are you cutting? How do you intend to achieve what you intend to achieve? And then once you finish, we try to limit our talking to about 15 minutes between you and I. Then we open it up for questions. For people that are listening for the first time or watching for the first time, the way it works is that if you have any question for Councilmember Glover, you will type it out in the Facebook page, and then I will ask him that question. I ask everyone, like I've always done, that we have to be civil and be kind to each other. We're all looking for solution. We're looking for what is best for our citizens. And so we have differing opinion, and that's okay. This session is not a debate. It's more about information gathering and understanding all the options that we have so we can make the best decisions for our citizens. So put your question in the tab and then we'll get started. So if you would tell us your rationale, the rate, as well as any cuts, if there's any in your budget.
Okay, well, my rationale is simply this. We've experienced something that none of us have ever lived through before. Yes, I was on the school board, was on the council for 2 terms, got elected in the at-large position. So I've seen an awful lot in the city, but I have never seen anything, excuse me, of the magnitude that we're in right now. With that, I mean, our unemployment has dropped to around 13, 14%, whatever it is. So a lot of people are unemployed still in Nashville. We keep thinking we're going to get back in business, and every time we do, we get back out of business, and we keep floundering back and forth and back and forth. And one of the things I heard from everybody reaching out to me is, how is it that we have to shut our business, furlough our people, lay off people, et cetera, but the government's not doing any of that? And frankly, I think that's a very rational question, and one that we really have to be honest with ourselves, and we need to address it. I did a presentation this morning at a local restaurant, and he himself had to furlough his employees for 6 weeks. He still doesn't have everybody working full time right now, simply because of all of the obstacles that keep being thrown up in front of him. So when I approached this, what I looked at was, what is the weekly payroll roughly of Metro? As you're well aware, the council cannot lay off people. We cannot furlough people. So the only option we have is to cut money from the department. So my first area of savings is in the staff area. And how that's done, each director would have to decide that. But it's about a total of about $35 million that I've reduced there. Now, depending upon how you handle it, it would reduce, part of your staff basically about 1 week per quarter or however you decide. If you have open slots that haven't been covered, that are included in the budget. I mean, there's a lot of different ways the money could be dealt with and looked at. So that's my first place. The other is I looked at other reductions outside of the staff. One is, and I'll give you one because this will make people mad, but it's okay when I ask you to hang with me for a minute. I took the cash out of the Barnes Fund and I moved it to give away land. We have tons of land in Nashville, and I've been speaking with developers for well over a year now about utilization of the land versus the money. We really haven't put up enough doors yet under the Barnes Fund in order to make a real impact. And the developers don't care. If we provide them land on a land lease, very inexpensive, dollar, whatever, and then it converts to where we're getting property taxes off of it, then we're actually moving the projects, I believe, much more rapidly in a more cost-efficient manner. So that's another area. Those savings would be about 47 million as far as the various other, and I thought I could share, but I can't get the stuff up. So I'm going to have to just kind of give you a quick summary. Yeah. And then as far as potential COVID replacement, somewhere between 10 and $20 million. I know that we're going to have a discussion on Monday. We're going to be discussing somewhere between probably 20 and $40 million in expenditures that the administration feels like that COVID money would qualify for, or that the COVID Act, CARES Act would qualify for. And we'll just continue that conversation. Then I added back in employee step pay. You know, we can't take these folks who just started with us, been with us for a year or two, and number one, not give them a cost of living adjustment, but also not give them step raises. That is not fair to the people of Nashville. It certainly isn't fair to the employees that kind of counted on that because they start out low and those steps are there. So added back in a part of the money on the community education. I was listening the other night when Councilman Mendez was doing the meeting, and I just listened. I didn't participate. Opportunity now, I added back in. Nashville grad added back in somewhere between about $4 and $12 million. And the reason I say somewhere between, 7 and $12 million is because the next thing the next two things I'm going to talk about, I also built in between 4 and 5 million if we utilize that opportunity that I'll discuss after the next deal. The next area I went to was the wheel tax. And people will say, wait, whoa, you're gonna hit us with wheel tax and property tax? Now, if you'll stay with me for a minute, here's the rationale on it. Wheel tax, we would generate 35 million. I would sunset it, year, 2 years, whatever. We'll look at and kind of determine, it will kind of be determined upon where we are. And if the recovery comes back as hopefully as strong as we're hoping it will, if it does, we can back it down, eliminate it, do away with it, whatever the case may be. But in the short term, we have a lot more automobiles out there than we have residents. We have a lot more automobiles out there than we have apartments, than people who are renting. And so if you look at a 32% property tax increase, you do a couple of different things that actually is extremely devastating to the overall economy of Nashville. First of all, for every $10,000 or for every 10% that you raise your property tax, you kill your buying power to buy a new home or selling power of a new home or sell your home of about $10,000. Now, that's not me that came up with that number. I reached out to investment bankers, to bankers, mortgage bankers, and we talked through every aspect of it. And they ran the formulas, the average formula that they work off of. So if that's the case, at a 32% property tax increase, we just killed about $32,000 in your buying power. And we also took away about $32,000 in your selling power. So it doesn't make sense to do that, especially when we've had such an aggressive growth pattern with our property values over the last multiple years here, several years, over the last decade, certainly here in Nashville. And so that's why, for me, the goal was always to lower that property tax down as much as possible. The wheel tax will help do that. By generating that $35 million, it will help fill in a part of the gap, not all of it. But let's say that we are able, and I'll give you the percentage I'm going to talk about here in a second. Let's say we're able to reduce your projected increase of property tax by between 50 and 70%. Well, if on average on the homeowner, it's $750 and we knock it down $400 or $500, but you have to pay an additional $120 for car tags, you still have a net gain of $380. The city still gets money and we still are able to function, and it spreads it out. You know, we have a property tax increase that won't go away. We can talk like it will, but it won't. So we just have to be very transparent. We have to be very real with people about the way we're going to approach this. Then, as I was saying, you know, there literally are thousands of acres of land in Metro that we own. I'll give you one example. We own property out here in the Hermitage area where we bought Ravenwood, and we bought the farm right behind it in the Carl Dean administration. Years ago, we bought it, and we've still done absolutely nothing with it. However, we're paying bond payments on that every year for debt service, but we've not done anything with it. Why? Because we don't have the operational cash, is what we're being told. So that being said, why wouldn't we bring in a group that could possibly use, and I'm not saying that particular piece of land, but there's a group of asset retention and revitalization trust that could come in here and help and actually generate money where we don't, quote, sell the land. They manage it, they develop it to where it will generate recurring revenue for us. And they certainly feel like that there's millions of dollars available to us there. I put in what I believe is probably a very conservative estimate of maybe about 125 million. Now, I did not hear Councilman O'Connell's presentation, but it's my understanding he has got TANs money or MLF money that's out there. It's very low cost money that could actually, maybe we could marry the two ideas. I really don't know. That's one reason that I also think waiting one more week is the right thing to do, because we'll need to figure out because we can't amend my substitute nor his, only the chairs and the mayors. And frankly, 32% or 34 or 36 or 37% for me is a no conversation starter. That's way too much. When all is said and done, when you take the entire package that I'm looking at, I've got about 101, 102 million dollars that I haven't been able to fill the gap on of the 332 million dollars that the mayor has projected will fall short on revenue next year. So that would require about a 31 cent or a 10% property tax increase. And then I think we got to be very, very honest with everyone and tell them we may have to come back next year and bump it up a little bit more, you know, but if the economy comes back extremely robust, then maybe we don't. Maybe we do away with the wheel tax. If we utilize the TANs as an example, then maybe we utilize the wheel tax to pay the interest charges until it does come back. So I built in a couple of different variables here in order for us all to kind of slowly dig back out with this. But right now, I haven't talked to a soul that feels like they can just reach into their pocket, yank another 750 if they own the house on average, or individuals who rent. They don't really think about their rent. They're like, well, I rent, it doesn't bother me. You better be concerned, because your landlord is going to say, sorry, I'm having to raise your rent 32% because the government raised property taxes. Now, we all know that 32% is not all of that money that when you pay in rent is for property taxes, but it's an easy answer for them to up it. So on average, we've estimated roughly an $1,800 a year increase in your rent. If we reduce it by 2/3 or 70%, that comes down drastically, and you're looking at roughly on average of 2 cars are in a home, $120 more for tags. But if we knock that price down and you get a net savings of where we need to be, I think it makes sense.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. I want to make sure that we start getting to questions, and I think it's very, very detailed. My understanding is that, in summary, your tax rate is about 31%. You're looking at businesses
31 cents,
31
10%.
cent, 31 cent, 10%, 31 cent. Oh, different numbers. Sorry about that. So it will be 31 cents, which is about 10 cents. And you're coming at it from looking at what businesses have to do, people struggling, and how things are going for the citizens. And you're saying the government should be able to do the same thing. And you're looking into maybe following, looking at staff cut about 35 million. We cannot follow as council, but you're making a recommendation for staff decreases of about 35 million.
I
Or
put
decreases staff
35,
expenses
I cut 35 million in the various
in
departments.
the various
I had a
departments.
formula that I used. How
Yeah.
how they do it, we don't have a
It'll
say.
be up
So
to
all
them.
we do is
Okay.
cut the dollars.
Okay, all right. And then there's the bonds fund, and then there's a wheel tax, and then you are putting money back for some essential community services as well as STEP. So I'm going to open it up. The way it works for everybody that is listening is that you send in your question, you type it into the Facebook page, and then I get to ask Councilmember Glover. If you don't have, you should have questions. Please ask questions because we want to make sure that everybody understand and everybody is able to participate in the conversation. I've only got one question right now that I see in there, but I'm going to ask you that. Also, I want everyone to know that what I'm doing is facilitating conversation. And so if people are not asking questions, I get to ask questions that I think people will ask. So some of the things that Councilmember Glover just said today about helping businesses is what I asked Councilmember Mendes last week. So I'm going to flip it around and do a pushback on you to ask on the other side if people are not asking. So we have a very robust conversation. The first question that I see there, Ms. Harper wants to know, he said, well, we're talking about if we increase taxes now, why do we think that it will not go down again? Because historically, our taxes, even when they go up, sometimes have gone down. And right now, the tax rate is lower than it's been before. So why do you think that it will not decrease if it increases now?
Well, if you're talking about the reassessment period, half of the city will go, they'll stay where they are or go down, but the other half goes up. If you happen to live in the part of town where it went down, yeah, your taxes went down. That is not the case for everybody in town. If you look at East Nashville, you look at the Gulch, you look at certain areas where that real estate market took off and flew, and those property values just really soared drastically. Those folks are paying a whole lot more now. And then we talk about it being a low tax rate. I love hearing that because whenever we talk about that, we really need to compare apples and apples. You know, they say, well, compared to Shelby County, compared to Knox County, compared to Hamilton, all this other, you know, our taxes are the absolute lowest. Well, apples and apples. Today I was at a business, barbecue place. He's got the same square footage. He's got the almost the identical footprint of a business in Memphis. Square footage is there. Difference is his building is valued so much higher. So at a 3.155 property rate, he pays $55,000 a year. The same business in Memphis that actually does more business as far as dollar wise is concerned has the same square footage, pays $18,000 a year. But we don't really compete with Memphis, and we don't compete with Knoxville. We compete with the surrounding counties that we have. And on average, the property tax of the surrounding counties that touch Davidson County, but also includes Montgomery County, is $3.38 versus our 3.15. So mine would take it up to about 3.47, 46, 47, 48, whatever, right there. So we would end up actually being a little bit higher than the average county that touches Metro Nashville. That's who we have to compete with. That's who our home builders have to compete with. That's the people selling their homes. That's who they have to compete with. So that's what I look at. I don't care what Memphis is doing or what Knox County is doing. I care about what Nashville is doing.
The next question is: did your substitute, does he give any additional money to MMPS? And thank
No.
you, Council Member Zach Young, Delisha Porterfield. I see Jeff Syracuse is also joining us, and Quantitum. I'm sorry, I was giving credit to everyone joining that. Does he give additional money to MMPS?
No, because the phone call we're all getting today is MNPS will be getting additional money from the COVID stuff. And so I think we have to sit back and kind of figure out where that is. There was not additional money that I threw into it. No.
Okay. The next question is, you talk about layoffs and leaving it to the departments. In your opinion, do you have any idea where you think this should occur? Any particular department that you think should be laying people off in your projection?
Well, first of all, I didn't say anybody's going to get laid off. I said I have a formula.
Okay.
I had a formula that if it's worked properly, nobody would be laid off. But there are things that directors can utilize. Now, the one thing I did not do any cuts in the police nor fire department, because we're already so short on staff in both of those that I didn't touch those. But everything else I did, and I did it equally. I did it by the number of employees, by the total savings I was looking for, divided, and that's how I arrived at the each department of what the reduction would be for the upcoming 12 months.
Okay. Someone wants to know how did you address the reserves, the cash fund balances in your substitute?
It'll end up in somewhere between 75 and 100 million. Again, some of it is part of that COVID stuff, trying to figure out where some of the expenses can fall, etc. We unfortunately don't know the answer to that. So I've got some adjustments I can make in there in order to bring that reserve fund back up to where the state would like for it to be.
Okay. Someone asked, I think you already addressed it. It was asking if you have money in your substitute for public safety. And there's a follow-up question that if you do you have any response to the many Nashvillians that we're talking about? I want to make sure that I read it as it is, so I don't want to paraphrase it. How much does your proposed amendment designate to public safety? Do you have a response to the many Nashvillians who spoke out against the money going towards public safety in the last hearing?
Yes, I do. I didn't take anything away from public safety, because I also have a response for the many, many Nashvillians who do not want us to do a defunding of the police department. So I did not touch that money. I followed the mayor's lead there, did not touch it, did not move it, did not reduce it, did not increase it. And so therefore, I stayed exactly where Mayor Cooper was on his budget.
Okay. The next question I can actually ask, somebody was asking how much will the property tax increase affect a renter versus a homeowner or a business owner? I'm going to say that we don't charge renters property taxes, but they do get an effect. If you increase it on the homeowner, they can increase their rent, and that's the indirect impact on renters. As far as business owner is concerned, right now, we pay taxes on 25% of your property value for residential, and businesses pay on 40% of their value. So that's how it impacts businesses. So businesses will be paying the same rate, but at a much higher assessed value, because it's 40% compared to 25%.
Well, at a higher percentage, not a higher necessarily value. I mean,
value.
But yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
Somebody wants to ask, do the police need 2 helicopters this year?
Well, I don't know. I'm not a police officer. I know that it's something that they've said they need. It's just like, do the schools need the Chromebooks they're talking to us about? That's not our job. Our job is to have the stuff brought to us. The only thing we do is allocate money. So for me to answer the question, do they need it? That's a question for the chief and for the people of the police department. Do the schools need Chrome notebooks? That's a question for the director of schools. Do each department need the things they say they need? That's why they're there. I rely on their expertise to tell me what they need, and then we determine if we have the money for it or not.
Okay. You mentioned in your opening about the staff part that we as council don't get to tell anybody what to do. We're going to leave it to the department. So if it's up to the department's discretion or choices, and the department comes back and said, we're not going to do this, how do you make up that 35 million in your substitute?
You don't. The department has to cut the dollars that's in the substitute. It's not my fault. It's not my rules that we can't say do this or do that. The only thing we can do is tell how much money, excuse me, how much money the department would be reduced. Now, I spoke to a number of department heads and walked through, and I mean, I didn't begin doing this last week. I've been working on this for months. I had no earthly idea where we were going to land or anything else, but I've been doing a lot of homework, and I've been debating, and I've sent in this thing about three or four times, something like that. It's come back, and I've kept trying to listen, and I literally finished it late last night, and I sent it into finance today. There's no doubt in my mind they'll come back and tell me I'm still off somewhere, and I'll have to adjust it probably Wednesday or Thursday of this coming week in order to file it on Friday. But that's the outline of what I'm looking like. But I've got literally line items that I've sent into finance, and they'll kick it back to me, I'm certain, and say, well, you're off by, because every time, you know, they run it through every one of the formulas and every bit of it. And I've been off, fortunately, to the good part, where I don't have to end up reducing it, you know, by 3 million, 5 million, or whatever the case may be. So where that number is going to actually land, I probably won't know for certain until Wednesday or Thursday, whenever finance gives me the package back.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned something about using the land that we got and taking advantage of that instead of giving the money to the banks for let's do a land deal and all of that. My question to you is, I think it's a wonderful idea to make sure that not take money from the banks fund for me, but I do think that taking advantage of all the assets that we have, buildings and land, and using it in a way that give us money, it's a good prospect. My question is, will this idea materialize this season? Would we be able to get anything done to the point that it will impact the budget by June 30th? I mean,
Well,
you've bought houses, I've bought homes. By the time you sign the deal and get everybody involved, it takes longer than 30 days. So do we have the time for this to have an impact on this year's budget?
if we put $10 million in our operational budget to award, we don't give that money away on July 1st. So do we have time to award land? Yes. Are developers looking for land all over Davidson County? And are they looking to be able to do affordable housing? There's a lot of groups out there that are absolutely looking to do that. So in FY21, can we do it? Yes, we can do it. I've spent countless hours on the phone with developers all around the county, and it was their idea originally. They said, look, don't give us money. We need land. We need land. And it just so happens Metro has a ton of land that we don't utilize. And if we're not going to utilize it, I think that we look at allowing it to be developed, because then it creates a recurring source of income from property taxes. They don't care if they got cash or if they got land. We're not giving up the land. We would still own it, but it turns into a revenue source along with developing affordable housing for people who can't afford to live in Davidson County. So I think it's a win-win according to the developers I've spoken with. So that's why I threw that in there, not to take it away, but to enhance it and hopefully move it more rapidly than what it has done.
Okay. So a follow-up question from me, and I'm the one asking, I'm still looking at questions here. If I see anyone, I'll jump into it. As somebody who support the bonds fund, and somebody who also think we should make good use of our assets, I have no problem with that. Why does it have to be either or?
Why does it have to be what?
Why does it have to be either one of them? Why can't we not continue what we're doing with the bonds fund that we got going and it's working there, and then do the deal with the land?
Because we can't afford to. That's the problem. We keep spending money we don't really have. I mean, we cut 5 million last year because the money's not there. Just because we put it in the budget, it's got to balance. That's been our problem. The budget hasn't been balancing. We have to balance the budget. The comptroller has told us that's what we have to do. If everyone was listening very carefully when the comptroller was there with us, he is the one who made the suggestion that he felt like a combination of cutting expenses and raising taxes was probably the right way to approach this problem. And that's exactly what I did. I approached this problem with cutting expenses, raising taxes, and making it to where hopefully we don't break anybody's backs with a massive tax increase. Because here's what happens, whether we want to admit it or not, whether we think it's true or it's not, it is true. If we raise our taxes, then watch people exit Davidson County. They will. The ones who can afford to go, they'll go. We don't need to do that. We need to keep people in Davidson County. We need to get people in our schools. We need utilization of the resources that we're paying for every day. So I tried to make it to where we didn't all of a sudden jump so far ahead of some of the counties who surround us that people just say, well, I don't need to stay here. I can sell my house, move to Wilson County or Williamson County, which by the way has a much lower property tax rate. And I get so much more for my dollar. People don't mind driving into Nashville. We complain all the time about that. If there was a way to figure out how to do a medallion or a sticker for all the people who come in here and, utilize Nashville to make a living and then leave on Sunday nights. And take money out of here. Wish we could figure that one out, but we haven't been able to figure that one out yet because I've been working on that for a few years now.
So the essence of the question that I was asking in terms of why we're not doing both is the same thing somebody was asking. How do you make sure if you give the land to the developers that they will actually use it for affordable housing? How do you make sure that they will not jack up the rent in a year or two once they get the land?
You use the exact same guidelines, and if they don't follow the guidelines, then you yank it back from them. The banks aren't going to look. Everybody finances these deals. They have to meet the criteria that's laid out. Otherwise, they don't get the financing. I don't know anybody who comes in and builds a big complex and pays cash for it. That just doesn't happen. And so therefore, you put in the safeguards, the legalese, the lawyers, they do all of that stuff. But it's no different. What's the difference of we give them the money and then a few years down the road, they change their mind? Well, they got to give us back the money, or they got to do this, or they got to do that. So, the same guidelines fall in place. In fact, I actually think we've got greater control of it than, handing over cash.
It's just comments. I was trying to see if anybody was asking question, but it was just a lot of comments about somebody wants to move to Wilson County, and somebody said Williamson County has less property tax. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
I did not know that. I did not know that.
Most of the counties around us either have less or sitting right on it. The average property tax of all the counties that touch Davidson County right now is sitting at $3.38. If you took my plan, then it's going to move it to roughly $3.46, $3.47. But if you take it $1, we're moving to $4.155. So it makes us uncompetitive in the home market, in the sales market. So I'm merely looking at all the aspects.
We're not comparable to Williamson County because we are a metro county government. And so we're not the same size of government. Even if their property taxes is lower, it's just a county seat. It's not a metro government. So I think that, yes, they could have a lower taxes. I don't know that. But even if they do, you want to make sure that you're comparing, like you said, apples to apples. And you want to compare a metro government to another metro government. So that we're not mixing stuff up. So I wanted to point that out.
I will respectfully disagree with what you just said, because when people buy their homes, they don't care what size our government is. They care about what kind of taxes they have to pay, and that you have to look at.
Well, I want to go back to what you said. Again, I want to facilitate, and I don't want you and I to go into it. I'm going to let people ask the question. But if we're saying that we don't want to look at Shelby County, who is a metro government, who has the higher taxes, because we're only going to look at what happened, and I'm using your
they're not a metropolitan government.
No, but they're not. Shelby is a county. I'm sorry. Yes, but we don't want to look at, the point I'm making is you don't want to look at Shelby but we don't want to look at Williamson either. We want to focus on what is happening in Davidson County. I'm using your response back to be able
And
to go back to
and
that.
so what I've said is my response back with my substitute budget deals with the financial issues that we have right now, in my opinion. We certainly, hopefully, we'll be able to talk about it and we'll figure out where we go.
Somebody else is asking, why is it that we have so much money going to the criminal legal system? And I think you may have addresses as well. Why are we not looking into putting money in healthcare, social services, and affordable housing? And if we're looking at the conversation we're having about bonds fund and all of this, why is it that we're willing to cut department budget? I don't get that question, but you're not willing to go into public safety. I think it's just asking about your stand on public safety again, and why don't you think we need to put more? What is your stand on putting more on healthcare, social services, and affordable housing?
Well, I did not end up cutting Metro General Hospital. It was one of the areas I looked at, so I didn't cut healthcare. For those individuals who can't afford it, now believe me, I looked at it, and in one of the first models I looked at, I had cut them pretty drastically. I ended up not changing that because of all the atmosphere and all the things that are happening. Again, let me emphasize, I didn't finish this until late last night because I've been trying to listen to everyone. We don't sit down and take and defund the police over a week or 2 weeks worth of discussion. First of all, I will never buy into that arena because I think it's the exact opposite of what I would do. But you certainly don't do it over a week or two, because if you do something of that nature without understanding the full unintended consequences, I don't think the people will be happy with it. And I will say this, they certainly will care about what the property taxes look like in the surrounding counties with us if we do that wrong. So I'm not moving off that position.
All right. I'm trying to look at questions here if anybody have any more questions. Now, on the COVID funds, my understanding is that the COVID fund that is being spent now is not coming out of operations. It's coming out of a special fund. So when we do get the reimbursement, it goes back into that special fund. So how does that help operation if it's not coming out of operations right now?
Well, see, it's your understanding. My understanding is a little bit different. That's the problem. We don't none of us have the full understanding. We're all kind of interpreting it. But I think when we have the work session on Monday with Budget Finance, we will hear more details from it. I know we have some resolutions that are being brought from the administration on utilization. One is for schools. I don't know exactly what that dollar amount looks like. One is for other departments. I'm not going to sit here and call it out because the administration. I know the schools is something they're going to want to act upon quickly because of the timelines and everything else of how they want to utilize it. The rest, I'll wait and see. I learned a long time ago, don't jump out ahead of a answer if you don't know what the answer is. So I just don't speculate.
Okay. So now you don't want to speculate, but if you do come out and any of this is not doable, do you have what would be the go-to place? What would be your makeup if you're not able to do any of this? So we have a session, the COVID is not available, but we still need to fund some things. Are you going to go back and look at some more cuts, or you wait until you get there to do that?
And see, this is why I love you asking this question. You just gave me the reason why we shouldn't vote on this on June 16th. We should wait until June 23rd to where we make sure we have the proper conversations around this and we take care of everyone. Because look, I don't want to decide a 2.3 or a $2.4 billion conversation. I don't want to decide it in a day or two. And don't tell me we know everything right now, because we don't. If we're all honest with ourselves, we don't know everything that we really need to know. We don't know what revenues look like. We're not going to know. It's going to continue to change. We need to be flexible enough now through really around the 1st of September that if we've got to adjust the rate some, we need to be honest with everyone and tell them, everything is very fluid right now. This is perhaps, no, not perhaps, this is the strangest environment that I've ever been in. Of the 13 or 14 budgets that I've been involved with as an elected official in Metro, this one is the strangest one I've ever seen in my life. And so therefore, I don't think we need to be rushing to conclusions, because conclusions are not something that's easy to find right now.
What about borrowing? How does Nashville borrow money?
Well, I mean, I think Councilman O'Connell knows more about that than I do. I looked at areas that doesn't utilize borrowing money. It utilizes our assets as opposed to selling the assets. It utilizes them and then turns them into recurring revenues. Now, I also don't know enough about that particular one to go into a lot of details, but Councilman O'Connell, and again, I haven't discussed his plan with him, but I heard that he was looking at like a TANS program that were low interest rates, interest only for like 36 months or something like that. So he would really be the one I think that's much more qualified to talk about that than I am, because that's not an area I really dove into. However, in figuring that there might be an opportunity to blend some things, I did go ahead and build into my budget the contingencies of if we utilize financing.
Okay. There's a question about, we have a lot of people that are coming into Nashville. Why don't we tax them? Have you considered road tolls or a payroll tax? I will say on the payroll tax, we have the conversation. A payroll tax is a state decision. We don't pay state income taxes. My understanding from our last conversation that this was brought up a while back and the state did not allow it, but I think it's a conversation that needs to continue at the state level. But what do you think about payroll taxes? What do you think about road tolls?
Income tax is unconstitutional in the state of Tennessee. So we can talk all we want, but we're not going to get anywhere with it because it's not going to go anywhere.
It's a state decision. Yeah, but the state might decide to do it if a lot of people push for it. Yeah, she just wanted your opinion.
Yeah, I'm going to take a wild stab here and say they won't. So I don't even want to spend time and waste time on that. Same holds true with toll roads. Every corridor pretty much that's coming into Davidson County is state money. I mean, you look at even Central Pike, you look at Franklin, you look at Franklin Pike, you look at a lot of the main thoroughfares, certainly the interstate. That would be something the state would have to approve, and I just don't see it happening. So, I mean, it's a great idea. I've been trying to figure out how do we actually sell medallions, and I'll give you a prime example. Before tourism tanked on us here, we had people coming in every weekend, starting on Thursdays and leaving Sundays, from Atlanta, from Birmingham, from Louisville. These Lyft and Uber drivers, and they were coming in and they were working the area because they could make a whole lot more money in Nashville during the spring, summer, and fall than they were making in their own home cities. They would come in here, they would take a lot of money, and they were gone Sunday night. So even getting a hotel room, it didn't matter. They could come in here, they could work, they could make a lot of money, and they'd leave. And we were getting virtually nothing from it. So I started asking, can we sell a medallion? And it's come back multiple times. No, I keep going back, and we just haven't found an opening yet to do that. So I think it's a great idea. It's just not something that's going to happen right now.
Okay. If I miss your question, please put it up again. I'm going to keep scrolling back and forth. Somebody did put a comment here that I thought was a good one. It's on Williamson County taxes. The point is that even though the property taxes are lesser, the value of homes in Williamson County are higher. So you might actually end up on the other side and pay more because you have to pay more on the value of the property. Just a comment.
Yeah. Well, once again, let me address that if I may, because I think that's a great comment. The same holds true for Shelby County and Memphis. The tax may be much higher, but the property values here are much higher, and so that same person who pays $18,000, that business in Memphis with the same square footage pays $55,000 here. So they're right. Property values are higher. So everything is relative.
All right. There is a question about changing the vote, the date on the voting on the decision. Your stand is that we should change it. My understanding is that if we don't vote by June 30th, the mayor's budget passes, which is what happened last year. if we don't know by June 30th, if we don't vote on a budget, we don't agree on a budget, June 30th for everybody, then the mayor's budget becomes the budget. Is that correct?
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
So,
But
so
we vote
my
on June
understanding is
twenty-third. If we
if we
vote on June 23rd, we're within the June 30th. I'm not asking for us to go past June 30th.
so vote on the budget on the 23rd, or vote on the substitute on the 23rd.
Mhm.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, because
So
on
that
the
is a
16th,
question. Okay.
yeah, on the 16th, what we may well find is, Councilmember O'Connell's substitute has some good ideas. Mine has some good ideas. Others. We can't amend Councilmember O'Connell's nor mine. And so therefore, I think we're cheating the taxpayers if we rush ourselves here. We may end up going with the Mendez plan or the mayor's. I mean, I don't know where we're going to land, but we're under no pressure to have this done before June 30th. We have to have it done June 30th. But I don't know why we put in these self-imposed deadlines when we're talking about this kind of substantial property tax increase. I don't think we're doing our job if we're cheating the taxpayers out of a few weeks of good conversation. No matter where it lands, I think the taxpayers deserve that.
All right. I will leave that to a comment from the council office or the budget chair. I'm new, I'm a rookie, so I don't know how the timeline works. I will accept that without any shame. So I'm following the lead of everyone in terms of the timeline. I hear you said we need to do that, but I also hear that we don't want to play with getting a budget at the end of the 30th, and there's things we need to do. And so I don't understand that, but I think it's a conversation that the council will be having, and I think it's subject to majority vote, and so we can decide on how we go on that. But I don't have any comments on that one way or the other.
Yeah.
Would you ask a philosophical question? What role do you believe public government should support the work of nonprofit community, particularly for services for those that are most vulnerable in our community?
Well, I mean, I think that's a role of the nonprofits, and I think it's a role of the churches and others. I don't know why we got in the nonprofit business, but for some reason we did. I think right now everything needs to be on the table for discussion. I've never thought it's a good idea. I mean, we've done it, and you're right. The majority vote on it, and at the end of the day, after we vote, that's the way it goes. But if I'm asking a question, I mean, if somebody asks me a question, I don't agree with it. Philosophically, I don't agree that government should be putting money into nonprofits, because then we're picking who's our favorites. If we're going to get into that business, we need to fund every nonprofit there is in Davidson County. Otherwise, we don't need to be funding any of them, because fair is fair.
That's an interesting perspective.
You asked my philosophy.
That's an interesting philosophy. I do think that non-for-profits take up slack in where the government is not able to reach, and be able to provide services for some of the people most vulnerable that the government is not able to reach. And also enhancing that work, I think, is a good thing for the government, because we're not touching everybody. And so having a non-for-profit do that part of it and enabling them to be able to do it. Talk about, I mean, all of this stuff that we're doing. Talk about the CARES COVID thing with United Way. People donate to non-for-profit. They don't donate to government, and not-for-profit can help in situations where some non-profit don't get that money because the community is not giving them the money. Everybody don't have money right now. Then the government is saying, look, you're doing a good job. It happens everywhere. I don't think we should
Again,
stop. That's my philosophy, not yours.
Yeah,
I'm just
right.
putting that out. We're not going to debate that. I think that's why we have a conversation. Renee wants to know: is there possible, or do we have a liaison from Metro that works with the states on the budget issues? It sounds like the states does tie the hands of council.
Well, I mean, I think they have a conversation every week. Our director of finance, Mr. Crumbo, our director Crumbo, he talks with them, I think, weekly. I know certainly from the mayor's office they do. I know they've reached out and spoken to me a few times. I'm not a liaison, but I certainly want to kind of know what they're thinking. And, and that was always, you go back several months ago, the reason the mayor wanted to give us his budget by March 28th is because we originally wanted to have this done by the end of May. Well, it didn't work that way because of all the obstacles that we've fallen into. Look, we're not the only county this is happening to. It's happening all over the state. And so, the comptroller, I'm not going to speak on behalf of Mr. Wilson, but, the comptroller has his hands full with all of the counties right now. There's a lot of counties out there that are having a rough time. There are some counties having a rougher time than we are. There are some counties that are having nowhere near the rough time that we are. But the comptroller has to be responsible for the entire state. It was a great goal to try and have it done by the end of May. It wasn't possible. We didn't get the mayor's budget until the end of April. He had until right at the 1st of May. So nothing changed from last year to this year as far as the timeline. And so therefore, if that's the case, that's one reason I'm also saying, as complex as all this stuff is right now, for us to rush is a mistake. Now, you can disagree with me, but I'd rather cover every base and look under every stone to make sure that we collectively are coming up with what's going to be best for the taxpayers. Because while some people say they don't mind 32%, that's not the people who reach out to me. There's a lot of people that 32% will drive them out of the county. I think that's a bad way to operate government. That's my opinion.
All right. Let me see if we have another question. We're almost to where we're gonna need to. We started a little bit later, so we can push it a few minutes if we have any question there.
Well, I have until 4, and then I have to move on at 4 o'clock.
All righty. Actually, I don't see any more question out there. Do you have any closing remarks before I close?
My only closing remark is simply this. I've just handed it in to finance today. They'll come back. It'll all be filed Thursday or Friday. Everybody will get it in their package probably Monday. And I'm talking 15th. I don't think we need to rush a vote. I think that if Councilman O'Connell has some great ideas, if I've got some ideas, Mendez has ideas, other council members have ideas, then I think we need to have good conversation. I think the taxpayers of Nashville deserve that because, these are times like none of us have ever seen or witnessed. So 7 more days is not going to break us, but it may keep people's money in their pockets. And that truly should be the objective, is to take the least amount of money out of people's pockets to run a government, because anybody that pays attention to it, we hadn't been very good money managers over the years. Yes. And so therefore, I think we need to keep as much money in people's pocket as is humanly possible.
I want to thank Councilman Glover for his thoughts and for coming to us and for us exploring his substitute. I do want to not close on the notion that we've not been asking the question. I think that would be the wrong thing. There is a whole document online between the council and the administration of so many questions that have been asked on the budget. We've also been having all these conversations. So a lot of questioning and is going back and forth on all sides. So I don't want people living with we're rushing into things, because that is not what it is. But we need to continue looking. We need to continue asking questions. We need to continue digging. And I think it's our job to make a decision that is good for all Nashville. We're all getting this email. I get a ton of emails from people that say cut it, low for, and I get a ton of people that says I'm okay with it, because my focus is making sure that we do healthcare and school and things. So people have varying priorities. And we need to look at all of them and come up with the best decision. Next week, I'm going to be doing a people's perspectives. I want people that have listened to all 4 substitutes, that have watched all the deliberation. If you want something to say, let me know. If you want to be on a panel, I'll do a panel of maybe 4 council members and 4 citizens, so that we can explore some more. And then I'll close in 2 weeks with my perspective based on everything that I've heard. Please watch the videos. If you have more questions for Councilmember Glover, you can continue to put it in the Facebook page. He's going to go back. I always ask my guests to go back and read some of those comments in case we miss something. And you can put your response there. That way people can go back and look at it later. This video will be on the council website for people that missed it, and they can be able to see it too. I learned more about your substitute. I learned more about where you're coming from, just like I did from Mendes last week and O'Connor and Benedict. And that's the whole point of the conversation, that we continue to have this so that we can do our job better. So thank you for coming. Thanks everyone
Okay.
for listening. Let's
All
keep
right.
the conversation going. Thank you.
All right.